And now...
What is this?
I know you're gonna dig this.
This is the Flatland Sports Podcast.
Where do you come from? Lubbock, Texas?
Lubbock, Texas.
A place called Lubbock.
I wonder if they think I'm so gorgeous back in Lubbock.
What do you care about Lubbock? You're big time now.
I'm just a little homesick, that's all.
Is that what you want, Larry, to spend the night in Lubbock, Texas at a day's inn with a $15 voucher from Cinnabon?
Lubbock? No, it's near Lubbock.
What's it like there?
It's flat, real flat. You stand on a coffee can, you can see Colorado.
How are you doing from across the Great Plains of West Texas? This is the Flatland Sports Podcast, free and available worldwide on YouTube. Joel Klatt is a freaking idiot and represents everything that is wrong with the sports media landscape. We'll talk about why in a moment. We'll also discuss Red Raider basketball, a little bit of Lady Raider basketball. The Big 12 is also in the process of signing a private capital deal, what that means and how it affects Texas Tech, and so much more. But first, this episode of the Flatland Sports Podcast is powered by Midwest Helmets, where owner Dallas Thompson turns football art into a full-on experience. If you've ever wanted a custom helmet of any team, any design, or a wild idea straight from your imagination, Dallas can make it happen. Want a classic double T on a bass boat glitter shell? He'll do it. Need a helmet to rep your fantasy football squad? He'll build that too. Whatever you're dreaming up, Dallas brings it to life with incredible detail. These are one-of-a-kind pieces that will level up your office, man cave, studio, anywhere you rep your team. To order, just DM Midwest Helmets on Instagram or hit their Facebook page. Both are linked in the description. And when you mention Flatland Sports in your message, you'll get 10% off your custom build. Midwest Helmets. Custom, bold, built to stand out. On Monday, Fox Sports analyst and former Colorado quarterback Joel Klatt appeared on the Next Round podcast. He shared his thoughts on the two Group of Five programs in this year's college football playoff, Tulane and James Madison. I can't play the audio clip due to copyright restrictions, so I'll just read the key parts of the transcript and said, here's what Klatt had to say. It would help in the sentiment, the public sentiment, but it will be determined by finances and litigation. And the reason the Group of Five is included in the playoff is to avoid antitrust litigation. That's it, guys. We're not looking for a Cinderella. Nobody cares in football about James Madison or the equivalent of George Mason going to the Final Four. Nobody cares in football about that. We don't want Cinderellas. We want the best teams playing each other in the end. By the way, the host had asked what JMU and Tulane would need to do to prove that they belong in the playoff field. Now, I would have expected an answer that involved, breaking down team strengths, weaknesses, maybe talk about how Tulane could pull off an upset against a weakened Ole Miss squad. Instead, we get yet another dismissive take that felt like an attack on the underdog spirit that we love in college sports, all in the name of TV rankings. We're not looking for a Cinderella. Nobody cares about a George Mason-style run in football. Really? Are we supposed to believe that if James Madison shocks Oregon or Tulane knocks off Ole Miss and then Georgia to reach the semifinals, those wouldn't become the biggest stories of the year? Upsets are what make sports unforgettable. They create legendary moments and stories that we talk about for decades. Or am I missing something? Because if I remember right, Rudy is about a 5-star recruit who dominated Notre Dame for 4 straight years, right? And Friday Night Lights was about Dallas Carter steamrolling everyone on their way to another state title, right? If that wasn't enough, Klatt then took aim at March Madness himself. Here's what he has to say. In fact, hot take, I mean like the hottest of takes, which, by the way, when you say hot take, I mean the hottest of takes, you already know that you're an idiot. I mean like the hottest of takes that I've ever had in my entire life. The NCAA basketball tournament is a joke. It's the dumbest tournament and the least fair tournament in all sports. We put teams at odd times and neutral sites in a one-game affair. That doesn't crown a true champion. We're not doing anything that tells us who the best team over the course of the entire season, except for, seeing who can actually win games. First of all, that last part was my commentary. That was not Klatt's commentary. First of all, how could the NCAA tournament possibly be more fair? Every Division I conference champion gets an automatic bid. No deserving team gets snubbed because of brand bias or conference prestige. And even the elements that Klatt calls unfair actually make it fairer. Neutral sites, that removes the home court advantage. You know, the thing that unfairly benefits one team over another. Single elimination, everyone plays under the exact same rules and circumstances. You have to win your games to advance. No excuses. And I've heard this criticism before. A 68-team single elimination bracket isn't the best way to identify the objectively best team. And they're right. It's not designed for that. That's not what it's about. March Madness isn't about crowning the most talented roster on paper. We pretty much know that at the end of the regular season. That's how we end up seeding the tournament. It's about crowning a champion, the team that fights, adapts, and finds a way to win game after game until the confetti falls and the nets are cut. And as I said, we already have a pretty good idea who the best teams are by the end of the regular season. That's why and how they seed them. But the team that survives the gauntlet, in my book, is the best. Maybe not the most talented, maybe not the biggest brand, maybe not the top seed, but they proved it when it mattered most. And for that reason, I'd actually argue that it's the most effective way to find a true champion. In addition to all that, Klatt essentially pitched turning it into something like the NBA playoffs. Fewer teams, best of 3 or longer series in the early rounds. And if that's what you want, just go watch the NBA. Leave our beloved college sports alone. In fact, the college football playoff would be far better, becoming more like March Madness, not less. The NFL already borrows from it with their single elimination postseason. And I've argued for years that the FBS should simply copy and paste the FCS format. 24 teams, 10 automatic bids for conference champions, 14 at-large spots. Somebody posted what that would look like on Twitter. I'll put that up on the screen here as well. And people always say it can't be done for logistical reasons or financial reasons. Yet the FCS, with their budgeting, with their travel budget, pulls it off successfully every single year. The real reason it can't happen, a bigger field levels the playing field too much. ESPN and the power brokers aren't pushing to shrink access because they're afraid the underdogs will lose. They're afraid they might win. BYU got left out of the playoff not because the committee genuinely thought they weren't good enough, but because TV execs were worried that they might be too good and disrupt the preferred narrative. The worst part about Klatt's comments isn't that one analyst said something stupid. Plenty of people, plenty of podcasters, present company included, spout stupid takes all the time. It's that his views echo a broader, coordinated push to turn major college football into a closed league featuring only the usual blue blood suspects: Ohio State, Texas, Notre Dame, USC, and a handful of others. For example, just this week, Kirk Herbstreit went on nonstop with Joey Galloway and talked about how weird it was to have a college football Saturday with no college football, or just to have a Saturday in general with no college football. By the way, that exact same Saturday featured Army-Navy as well as the LA Bowl and about 5 FCS playoff games. But, no college football happened as far as Kirk Herbstreit goes, one of the biggest voices of the sport. It's yet another reminder that college football has become a leaderless, dystopian free-for-all for years. And now it's being hijacked by the people who seem to resent what makes a sport special, treating it like nothing more than a cash cow to be milked dry. Joel Klatt isn't just offering an opinion, he's saying the quiet part out loud on behalf of the people currently running the sport. This is a coordinated messaging effort, a propaganda campaign designed to soften the ground for an eventual SEC Big Ten breakaway. And the media is doing what it's always done, trying to gaslight the public into believing that nobody actually likes the very things that make college sports worth living. Now, the good news is fans are starting to notice, they're starting to push back, and patience is wearing thin. And as I've been saying for a couple of years, like Icarus, the power brokers of college football are flying too close to the sun. The same institutions trying to gatekeep the sport and control access believe they are untouchable. They aren't. Eventually, the arrogance catches up, and when it does, the fall is going to be especially loud. We'll talk Red Raider basketball when we return. This is the Flatland Sports Podcast, presented by Midwest Helmets. Texas Tech basketball returned from the Metroplex with a loss to number 17 Arkansas. The series now tied 41-41 between the Red Raiders and the Razorbacks. The loss drops the Red Raiders to 7-3 for the season. Texas Tech really controlled most of the game and kept Arkansas at arm's length until the final minutes of the game, where Texas Tech really just seemed to run out of gas. Head coach Grant McCaslin had this to say: "I felt like every momentum play in the last 10 minutes was all theirs. We made some good plays offensively. I just don't know about defensively that I thought would impact the game in our favor. It's imposing your will defensively, and we did not do that." McCaslin added, "I didn't do a good enough job with our rotations, and defensively, we missed some opportunities to be really competitive that I think will allow us to be great. They're a great team, and I think they were more connected than we were late. They scored at a really high rate and we didn't do a good enough job to make it difficult for them. We'll get better from it." On the court, JT Toppin recorded yet another double-double with 30 points, 11 rebounds, and 3 blocked shots. Christian Anderson had 26 points. Luan Watts started strong but played inconsistent for most of the game. And it's worth noting Donovan Atwell hit 2 3-pointers to reach a 1,000 career point milestone. The biggest issue for the Red Raiders was free throws by far. 3 for 10 from the line, not drawing fouls effectively, not making shots when you did, not a recipe for success in any game. Defensively, Arkansas also scored 10 points off turnovers to your 5, as well as 18 on fast breaks to your 4. You're just letting them get in there. All things that can be improved upon, and this team is playing much better than they were just a few weeks ago in the Bahamas. The biggest issue now is that you've missed a really good opportunity to get a quality non-conference quad 1 win. And you'll have another opportunity against the number 3 Duke Blue Devils. I'll preview that game in a moment. Before we get into that, let's touch on the game last night against Northern Colorado. Red Raiders do get the win in Lubbock, 101-90. The Bears made the game a little more interesting than we would have liked in the second half before Tech pulled away. So we'll start with the good about this game. Luan Watts played lights out, 36 points, 6 rebounds. JT Toppin had a very consistently good game, as he usually does, 23 points. Christian Anderson, another 14 points. You also got 14 points off the bench from Jalen Petty, which was really good to see. So a good night offensively. Certain things to improve on, but anytime you hit 100 points, you did something right. End of story. And what you did right was 19 for 24 free throws. You were concerned about, after Arkansas, about your ability to hit free throws. 19 for 24 is a huge improvement, really just from a standpoint of getting to the line, getting the calls, drawing the fouls. And obviously you would have, there's 5 more that you left up there that you would have liked to have hit, but 19 points is much better than 2 points, as we saw from the last game. Struggled a bit from beyond the arch, 12 for 28, just under 50%. The Bears gave you wide open looks, but you struggled to hit shots in the first half. All in all, it was good to see Watts step up again. It was also good to see free throws being drawn and also being made when you came to the line. When we return, we'll preview the Duke Blue Devils. This is the Flatland Sports Podcast, presented by Midwest Helmets. Texas Tech will travel to the Big Apple to take on the number 3 Duke Blue Devils. The game will be at Madison Square Garden for the Sentinel One Classic, 7 p.m. tip-off on ESPN on Saturday. What do we need to know about Duke? Duke leads the all-time series 2-0, both games happening relatively recently. Last game was in the Sweet 16 during Mark Adams' first year at head coach back in 2022. Also, Mike Krzyzewski's last season. That Duke won that game 78-73. Texas Tech just barely got edged out, if I'm remembering right, and almost won that game. Before that was another trip to Madison Square Garden in 2018-2019. Faced a Duke squad that was led by Zion Williams. You lost that game 69-58. Played much better than the score indicates, though. Played a much closer game. Offense was an issue that night. Tough game on Saturday coming up. Duke ranked number 3, 11-0. The Blue Devils have wins over Texas, Kansas, and Arkansas. Duke with an 85% chance to win, according to ESPN. This game will be the Red Raiders' last chance to pick up a quad one win in the non-conference before conference play starts, and it's going to be a really tough one to win. Players to watch. Cameron Boozer is the beginning and end of that list. Freshman from Miami, averages 23 points a game, first in all of Division I, leads the Blue Devils in scoring, rebounds, and assists. Keys to the game. We need Luan Watts to play as well as he did versus Northern Colorado. He played absolutely lights out last night. Along with him, JT Toppin needs to be consistent. Christian Anderson needs to do what he does, and you need some points off the bench. Also, make free throws. This cost you against Arkansas. You need to draw fouls and take advantage every time you get to the line. And then the last key, limit turnovers. Protect the ball, limit mistakes. Don't let Duke get anything easy from you. Duke is absolutely a championship contender this year, and this will be a tough game. But I call me crazy. I have a feeling Texas Tech puts it together in this game. Texas Tech is going to win this one 82-78. We'll talk a little bit of Lady Raider basketball when we return. This is the Flatland Sports Podcast, presented by Midwest Helmets. Lady Raider basketball remains undefeated after wins at Washington State and Abilene Christian. Start with Washington State. 82-51 the final score. Snuda Collins and Bailey Maupin scored 19 points each. Adley Blacklock was 3 for 3 from beyond the arc, her first double-digit performance. And then ACU, that game was played in Odessa, Texas, 67-57, a much tougher game than the Lady Raiders had faced this season. ACU putting up a little bit of a fight. Jada Malone, 6 for 6 from the field. Danae Fritz with her fourth double-digit game. And Texas Tech will take on Jacksonville today at the United Supermarkets Arena. That's Education Day. It'll be packed to the gills with elementary school kids. Always a fun atmosphere. 11:30 a.m. tip-off on ESPN+. That's the final non-conference game before beginning Big 12 play at Baylor on Sunday. That game will be a 3 p.m. tip-off on ESPN+. Lady Raiders just on a roll right now. I was skeptical going into this season how this season would go. You've struggled a bit in the Krista Gerlich era, but this team just feels completely different than the team of the last 5 years. Going back to last offseason, when you lose the Aaliyah Chavez lottery, I thought that was pretty much going to be it for Lady Raider basketball. I did not have high hopes for this season. But then it looked like, and what I assume happened was you reallocated some of those resources that you were going to put towards Aaliyah Chavez and used it to pick up what has been some incredibly good pieces from the portal. And so this is one of the best rosters that Krista Gerlich has had to work with in her tenure at Texas Tech. I'm almost ready to believe. We'll know a lot more about this Lady Raider team after they take on a very good Baylor team on Sunday. Until then, we'll just keep riding the highs here. We'll pick the first round playoff games when we return. This is the Flatland Sports Podcast, presented by Midwest Helmets. The college football playoff is officially upon us. Let's go now through and take a look at each game coming up. We'll start with the Friday game. Alabama, Oklahoma. Alabama, the 9 seed. Oklahoma, the 8 seed. That game will be played in Norman. It'll be a 7 p.m. kickoff on ABC, as I mentioned, on Friday night. Alabama, a 1.5 point favorite. Slightly edging Oklahoma. The spread, or the total is 40.5 points. Oklahoma on a roll, winning their last 4 games of the season. Alabama's a team that I really don't think deserve to be in the playoff, especially over a BYU, possibly even over a Notre Dame, although if I'm really going to be forced to choose between Alabama and Notre Dame, Alabama, I think, definitely should have made it in. And that said, I think Oklahoma is just a better team than Alabama, despite the spread, despite the predictions, despite Alabama's roster. I think Oklahoma's going to win this one. It's going to be 21-15. Weird score, but that's what's going to happen. Moving on now to Saturday, 11 a.m., 10-seeded Miami at 7-seeded A&M. probably the most interesting and intriguing matchup of the entire first round. Of course, that game being played in College Station. That is 11 a.m. on ESPN. A&M 3.5 point favorite there. I'm surprised it's not that A&M isn't favored by much more. Now, A&M is a team that I have considered to be fraudulent all year. They have not played anybody really in the upper half of the SEC. They had a good win over Notre Dame, who I thought was overrated. Had some good a good run in the SEC, but then the moment they face a team with a pulse, and being the Texas Longhorns, they not only lost, but they got blown out. I think Miami is a better team than their record indicates, and I think Miami is going to pull off the upset in Kyle Field. It's going to be 27-21, Miami Hurricanes. Moving on now, 11th seeded Tulane and 6th seeded Ole Miss. Game is 2:30 on TNT, HBO Max, True TV. Ole Miss a 17.5 point favorite, but you wonder about this game. Tulane, a team that is a team that, just like James Madison, being talked down a lot by the legacy media, having plenty of locker room bulletin board material here. But on the other side of it, and what might be the most intriguing thing, is Ole Miss is without their head coach Lane Kiffin, who left to accept the job at LSU. And so you wonder how these players are going to respond to that. This could be a moment where the team bonds, gets together, and decides we're going to win this one for ourselves. And then there's the side of it that our coach doesn't care, so why should we care? We're dealing with kids who are, for the most part, there for NIL. I don't know what the locker room mentality here is. I don't know how close this team is. It could go either way, but if there is a group of 5 team that is going to pull off an upset, it's going to be Tulane over Ole Miss, and that's what I'm going to pick. I'm picking Tulane to win this one in a shootout, 32-28. Moving on to the Saturday nightcap in the final first round college football playoff game. Number 12 seeded James Madison at 5th seeded Oregon. Of course, the winner of this game will go on to play Texas Tech in the Orange Bowl. This game is 6:30 p.m. on TNT, HBO Max, True TV. Oregon, a 21.5 point favorite. Oregon is more than likely going to win this game. I think James Madison is a better team than they are being given credit for. The logo snobs are out in full force against James Madison. However, I saw this team in the Sun Belt Conference Championship game. I saw Wayne Knight play. Now, I've heard James Madison has one of the better defenses in the group of 5. I haven't analyzed them enough to really make that determination myself. But regardless, I don't believe their defense is really going to be effective against the Oregon Ducks, one of the better offenses in the country overall. And so what it'll come down to is if James Madison can get themselves into a shootout with Oregon, if Oregon truly can't find an answer for Wayne Knight, this game could get really, really interesting. Now, Oregon, a 21 point favorite even, and I think Oregon is going to win this one. I think they're going to cover the spread. It's going to be 41-17 Oregon Ducks, and we'll see them at the Orange Bowl. When we return, we'll talk about the Big 12's private capital deal. This is the Flatland Sports Podcast, presented by Midwest Helmets. Back for one more. Last week, it was reported that the Big 12 Conference is in advanced discussions with private capital firms Redbird Capital Partners and Weatherford Capital on a potential capital partnership. Here are the details. The proposed arrangement would make up approximately $500 million available across the conference, with participation being voluntary for individual schools. If fully utilized, participating institutions could receive roughly $25 to $35 million each, depending on the final terms and the number that the schools opt in, which it sounds like it's basically based on 1 year's TV revenue. The Big 12 has stated that the proposal does not involve selling equity in the conference and would not alter conference governance or voting structure. The deal is being described as a commercial partnership or capital solution rather than a traditional private equity buyout. Redbird has previously worked with the Big 12 on sponsorship and commercial revenue initiatives, and Weatherford Capital is involved in structuring the financial mechanics of the proposal. The deal has not been finalized, and specific terms, repayment structure, revenue sharing, and use restrictions have not been publicly disclosed. Texas Tech would be eligible to opt into the capital program on the same voluntary basis as other Big 12 members. If Texas Tech chose to participate, the university could potentially access approximately $25 to $35 million in capital. Any discussion would be made at the institutional level and would likely require approval from university leadership and the Board of Regents. The proposed deal would not change Texas Tech's governance role or voting power within the Big 12. No Texas Tech specific comment or decision has been announced. What does it all mean? Well, before we get into that, we need to know about who these companies are. We'll start with Redbird Capital Partners. They were founded in 2014 by Jerry Cardinal, based in New York City. Core focus is sports, media, entertainment, data, and consumer brands. Notable investments include AC Milan, which is Italian soccer, Yes Network, which is the New York Yankees, Skydance Media, which is connected to Paramount and Paramount Plus, Fenway Sports Group, Spring Hill Company, which is a LeBron James company, and they were previously connected to the XFL and other spring football venture. How Redbird operates, they don't just inject cash, they monetize brands. Focuses on sponsorship, aggregation, media rights, optimization, global brand expansion, naming rights, and IP leverage. Prefer revenue participation over outright ownership when possible. So why Redbird wants the Big 12? College football is, as we sit today, and shockingly, one of the last undervalued live sports IPs. The Big 12 offers national inventory, multiple brands, year-round content. And Redbird has already helped the Big 12 on commercial revenue, making this the next logical step rather than a cold entry. The key point to hang on to with all of this is Redbird is not trying to own the Big 12. They're trying to sit between college sports and the money that hasn't been figured out how to be captured yet. Now, Weatherford Capital, that was a company founded in 2015 by Drew Weatherford, a former Florida State quarterback. Based in Florida, their core focus is capital growth, real assets, consumer platforms, sports adjacent ventures. What Weatherford does differently is they operate as a merchant bank, not a traditional PE, focusing on structuring deals, capital solutions, long-term partnerships. Less public-facing than Redbird, more financial plumbing. And the reason Weatherford is involved, they help design the capital structure, they manage risk, repayment mechanics, and long-term returns. Pairs that with Redbird's commercial expertise. So basically, Redbird brings monetization and brand growth. Weatherford brings financial engineering and deal structure. I think as college sports fans, and to be honest, maybe just as people, we have a tendency to see something new and immediately default to, this is new, this is different, therefore we should fear it. I've heard a lot of people say that this deal is something that will change college football forever. And that's probably true, but to be fair, college sports has gone through about 10 life-altering changes in the last 5 years alone. It's also true that private capital has potential to be an absolute disaster, and that should not be understated at all. But on the other side of it, has potential to be really, really good if it's handled the right way. And what that means is the conference isn't being sold off. The Big 12 would be collaborating with Redbird and Weatherford as business partners, not handing them ownership or control. The big question people keep asking, and the reason for much of the skepticism is simple. It's not that it's not clear how Redbird and Weatherford would make money in this deal. It just hasn't really been publicly known, publicly announced. because obviously they're not doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. They're not just making a donation to the Big 12 and saying and trying to do it for the good of college football. They're in it to make money. And the answer to that question would be that they make money by taking a share of the new revenue streams that they help the Big 12 create. I also heard it reported by Chris Level in terms of the $25 to $35 million line of credits being offered that would be repaid through a share of TV revenue for the school that attempts to that opts into taking those line of credits. Really, it's they're giving a school an opportunity to get in advance on TV revenue. So they're not just taking money from the conference. They're betting that the Big 12 is a business opportunity, one where if things work out, everyone will win. The other piece of this is the capital itself, roughly $500 million or about $25 to $35 million per school. The money would come in the form of a reduced rate line of credit, as I mentioned, that schools would opt into if they choose. And yes, in that case, the university would be taking on debt. Is that a bad thing? Like any debt, it can be. It's just like getting a credit card, maxing it out on fast food and Lucky Strike cigarettes. But what one person calls debt, another can call working capital. And if the money is used the right way, it can elevate athletic programs to an entirely new financial level. Now, I don't expect Texas Tech to opt into the line of credit. The Red Raiders are in a strong financial position, thanks in part to the oil and gas industry. And also, and credit where credit is due, planning ahead for the NIL and revenue sharing era. Texas Tech, one of the schools that really got ahead of it. But it's also clear that not every school in the Big 12 is in that position. Iowa State, for example, already had to halt multiple construction projects just to afford revenue sharing. For schools like that, this isn't greed, it's a lifeline. And when you combine access to capital with financial guidance and new revenue creation, this could genuinely change the trajectory of the Big 12 as a conference. Private capital is uncharted territory for college sports, and make no mistake, there will be casualties. Some schools and conferences will be taken advantage of by bad partners and fail to navigate this new world successfully. But for all my criticisms of Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark over the years, this has been his world for more than 30 years. And if there's any person positioned to navigate private capital correctly, it's Brett Yormark. So that's all I have today. Please take a moment, like the video, subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost you a thing, and it helps the show grow. This is the Flatland Sports Podcast. I'll be back next week, presented by Midwest Helmets. Thank you so much for joining me today, and Rec and Tech.